Go.
It's time, Papa said. I think it is, Mama agreed. Time for what? Adri asked. Papa's voice softened to share some wisdom. Welcome to the Sports Medicine Broadcast. I'm your host, John Seco, along with Jeremy Jackson, as we finish our second series in athletic training, leadership in athletic training, with a bit of a change of pace. Today we're covering a children's book entitled Only One You by Linda Krantz. Back in August, my assistant's young daughter, Mila, handed me this book and asked me to read it to her while we're in the midst of planning our very, very busy fall. I couldn't help but notice the great leadership tips given out in this book, and I knew I had to have it as part of our series. In fact, Dana, my assistant, said she knew that it was going to be a part of this series. We're going to do things a little different today and actually read the whole book. I know Jeremy and I have probably wanted to read all of Extreme Ownership and all of Leaders, but it just wasn't possible. As we go through each page in the book, Jeremy and I plan on discussing them as we feel they relate to our profession and how we can adapt lessons we've learned over the last couple of years and lessons from this children's book into our everyday practice, not only professionally, but personally. Jeremy?
Check out sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/only1u. Again, that's all one word, only one you. And then you'll be able to see each of the quotes and then some of our thoughts as we go through this. Again, sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/only1u. Without much further ado, this one could be a little bit long. So, John, let's get right to it.
Always be on the lookout for a new friend. So this was a great one for me. I thought when we look at the book and when we look at things that we've learned over the last couple of years, I think we have definitely opened up our doors to many more people in our lives. And Jeremy, you're one of them for me. I've been really blessed to meet you as a friend and as a person and as a colleague. And even looking back at after NATA this past summer in Vegas, the amount of connections that we've made over the last year and a half has been astounding to me, and absolutely almost shocking that the amount of people that I didn't realize that listened to us and were able to take some of the lessons that we talked about last year to heart and to see them enacted in their daily lives and see just how happy they can be just by taking ownership and control and to be active leaders in their profession. That's been one of the things that's when we left the exhibit hall that day, invigorated me, made me more excited to give back and to keep this series going.
I definitely agree. Like, I've talked with Sarah multiple times, and I would say for the last 10, maybe even since leaving college, last 13, 15 years, I haven't really had friends. Honestly, like there's people I was in contact with, my one friend from high school, I still keep in contact with him pretty regularly, but I haven't had people who I would consider friends consistently in my life. And it was just one of those, I had a conversation a while back with Jared Plummer about, he seems to be that kind of guy that everybody likes. Everybody just wants to kind of be around. Mm-hmm. But I'm not that type of guy. I'm not that person where everybody's like, oh yeah, let me just go call Jeremy, hang out with Jeremy, that kind of thing. And so for me, it's really been an intentional effort of reaching out and also allowing people in. And as we've talked about a couple of times before, when I was going through the issues with the school and whether I thought I was going to get fired or whatever it was, and I say, hey, John, I might get fired or whatever. He's like, quit being a high school girl, right? And then, I see so much like the friend who's willing to be the most direct and honest is usually the one that's going to be your closest or most trusted friend. So obviously Sarah is my closest, my best, my trusted friend because that's my wife, but someone like John stepping into my life has been really beneficial just to encourage and to say, hey, what about this opportunity? Hey, what do you think about this? Or whether it's, him sending an email or me sending an email, hey, don't be lazy, or, I see you getting up at 4:30 in the morning, good job, whatever it is, we've been able to grow that. But then there's also lots of people like, Kelly, your coworker over there, willing to help out and step up and say, hey, Jeremy, I really like what you're doing. I'm willing to help write these show notes. Or obviously the recent series that we're doing, there's lots of people reaching out and contacting us. And it's been really cool to to be a part of growth of people who I never met until we got to NATA this year or something like that. And so there's always opportunity for a new friend.
Yeah. Look for beauty wherever you are and keep the memory of it with you.
Let me see. Oh, this camera switching has me up. All right. And so this one is easy for me to overlook. Okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? Let's keep it moving. It doesn't matter if I got all the details or if I completely wrapped up whatever it was. Let's just kind of keep moving. Just keep moving forward. And sometimes that's really good because, I don't get bogged down by the details or by the obstacles. But a lot of times I just miss that opportunity. And it comes to life most whenever I'm dealing with my kids. Like, it's like, okay, well, what is your next assignment? Instead of like, hey, good job, son, I see you worked hard, or hey, tell me a little bit more about this. It's like, all right, cool, well, what are we doing next? And I so often miss the simplicity or the beauty of those things that are right there beside me because I'm looking for that next thing. Okay, well, where are we? We're in Boston on a family vacation, and all right, so where's the end destination? Not, hey, let's look at all these cobblestone streets and all these really old buildings and all this cemetery that we're walking past that's hundreds of years old. No, we're just trying to get to the Old North Church. I'm not worried about what's around me. I'm worried about where I'm going. And so this this is probably something I could like tattoo on my forearm or something, but I feel like I'm not getting emotional there. It's the weather drops below 60 here in Houston and everybody gets a cold. So this is one that I definitely feel like applies to me most personally rather than professionally. But then again, just like Dr. Games said, professional development is personal development. So personal development would be professional development as well. John?
Yeah. I by this page in the book, it's already, page 3 or 4. I knew that this is the kind of book that I wanted to include. And there's lessons in these very simple words, for a children. So I knew that it reminded me to keep the memories of the good moments. In our profession, athletics, it's the wins, the losses, it's winning the championships. Keeping those good moments, even the fun times on the sidelines where you're laughing and joking with an athlete or coworker, and to keep those in mind for when times are tough, because we are faced with very tough and difficult days, and they can sometimes outweigh the good days. But if you keep the memory of it, it's easier to go about those days. And you even wrote in the show notes, trying not to be taking pictures so much, and almost forcing yourself to keep a memory. That mental picture is more meaningful than the actual holding the phone up in front of somebody's face or moment, and taking the picture. Because how many times do we actually look back at those pictures and reminisce on them, right? I've got thousands of pictures on my phone that I couldn't tell you the last 5, probably. They're more screenshots than anything else. But it's for me, it's keeping an active memory and trying to go back and call on those good times, those good memories, for when times are tough.
Yeah, so that's actually just interesting. I wrote that and I didn't mention it again. The fact that you are mentally there in that moment rather than taking a picture. I do think that pictures are definitely valuable. Like Sarah and I went to Cabo without the kids, and it was like an all-inclusive resort, and we were just there. And so there's this one picture that I have of her. It's my absolute favorite. And so seeing that one picture helps me remember that whole entire trip.
Yeah.
But it's not that I like, oh, I love that picture. I do love that picture, but I love what that picture represents. It's the fact that I didn't have my phone, the fact that I'm in Mexico, so I don't have reception, right? So I'm not constantly on my phone. So it was just the relaxation, the boredom that created, and it was just the beauty, obviously, Sarah, that was all around me. So
blend in when you need to, stand out when you have a chance. When I look at this, I think of the leadership capital that we've talked about in creating the times when it's more important to speak up about certain situations and other times when you need to listen and stand back. And that's the blending in. For me, it's letting go of the ego, because the bigger the ego, the smaller the relationships that you build. So letting go of those things, listening to people, and then when you have a moment or when you're given the opportunity to stand out and to lead, take that opportunity. We talked about it's not a burden to lead; it's an opportunity to show your worth. And then when you get the chance, let others speak your praise, and that's something that Kevin Parker talked about. You're not the one that's out there creating your own nickname, because who likes to create their own nickname? Let others speak your praise.
Yeah, see, to me, this one is kind of, I don't know, self-explanatory. Like, and it fits most athletic trainers. We kind of just want to blend in, but then at the same time, we want to advocate. And so, as an athletic trainer, you need to be known for being there and being intentional, not just blending in and being on the sidelines. So, I've seen multiple people quote your it's not a it's not a burden, but it's an opportunity, on Twitter, and I think that's really a good perspective, because these meetings are an opportunity for me to get to know my principal, get to know my associate superintendent, to get to know the business office lady, to get to know the rules. It is a burden of my time, but it's also my fault that I was in those situations. And so, if I just blend in, then they don't know me. But whenever I stand out because I'm doing something innovative like the podcast, then they get to know me. They get to come to my classroom. They get to see me, see what we're doing. And even if there was some negative reason that they were doing it, they now know me and I have a
Mm-hmm.
chance to fix that. Right. And so now if someone says, hey, do you know Jeremy over at Pasadena, or the athletic trainer over at Pasadena? Oh yeah, that's Jeremy, whatever. And so now I'm having that opportunity to stand out, even if it wasn't all good. Like I messed up. I admit that. I own that. I'm working to fix it. But now I know a lot of upper level administration. So it's an opportunity to step up, to stand out, and to make the best of the situation.
Yeah, and even Tori talked about that too. When you're given that opportunity to stand out and to help others, we're here to help others. That's what athletic trainers are. That's the service that we've gone into. The profession is a service industry, and we are there to help other people. So when you're given that chance to lead and to impact not only yourself but your profession, take it. Don't go actively searching it out, because it may not always happen, but when you're given that chance to take it and to stand out, find your own way. You don't have to follow the crowd.
For this one, it's pretty easy too. So the podcast, I've been doing it for like 10 years, I think. And, obviously when I'm uploading episodes and stuff, I see like the stats and downloads. And so it is really cool that over 500,000, so it's like 520 something thousand downloads over the course of the podcast. And that's really cool. Like I didn't set out to be like something big or huge. It was just like, hey, I'm going to have these conversations. Hey, I'm going to bring these guest speakers in for my class. And then I did create my own way. And Chris Lanker with AT Podcast and me, I think we're the only two athletic trainer related podcasts way back then. And then Alicia, and then now there's several others. Obviously we've talked to Candid and a couple of others as well. But it really was just creating my own way. I didn't do all this research. I didn't find everything out. I just, all right, well, let me press record. Let me upload it to the internet, and then created my own way in athletic training. And it's really a great opportunity for me to learn, but more importantly, like we said in the very first one, to meet people. Right. So now I know people everywhere. Like I know people in the MLS, the MLB or NFL, those kind of things, because of the podcast. Right. I'm people in all sorts of different parts of the country or the world, even, because I've created my own way, and it's been really cool. So I think also that situation applies a little bit closer to home for some people in the fact that some if you enter a situation where there's already an athletic trainer there or has been an athletic trainer for a while, you don't have to do what they did. You are not that person, right? And so I don't have to treat the athletes the same way that other person did or has. So like when Sophia came in, she was big on manual therapy. And I like it. I just don't really know a lot of I haven't been trained on how to do it. And so I allow her to not follow whatever I was doing, but what she's doing, we take that and incorporate it in and allow her to kind of find her own way of treating and interacting rather than saying, no, this is what we do. So there's two really cool aspects to that one for me.
Yeah, it's blazing a path as an athletic trainer. We're all given the same, we all have to pass the BOC, and we all are set that minimum standard of being an athletic trainer. But it's what unique certifications, what unique courses, classwork, to make you a little bit more unique or special than others. But then when you have those unique abilities, those specializations, your ability to work with others. You talked about the podcast. We have how many different podcasts now that are athletic trainer based? A half dozen, a dozen of them, and they're all very unique, and they are all applying athletic training knowledge to their skill set and their very unique brand of podcast. And they're a lot of fun to listen to, and you're going to get something new from each and every one of them. But they're all, very similar, but they've all just blazed a different path to help promote athletic training and to give back to athletic training. I don't think anybody's in it to, make an extra buck or anything like that. I think we're all in it to help each other because we're so connected within athletic training. And for me, when I looked at that page, it went back to our conversation with Kent, Dr. Games. It's the personal development is your professional development. And if you're able to blaze a certain pathway and be a better person, you're probably going to be a better professional as well.
So, and we were kind of mentioning new friends, and I talked about people all across the country. And so I know right now Ernie Garza and Timothy Ackland are joining in. Ernie's here in the Houston area with me, but Timothy is in New Mexico or Arizona. I believe it's New Mexico. And again, it's just regular listeners to the show. And again, just, hey, thanks for joining us live. Thanks for listening and being a part of this conversation of growing, of contributing whenever you have something to contribute. So I don't know. This is just a lot of fun. So go ahead, John.
Know when to speak, know when to listen. This goes back to a couple pages ago when we read blending in. Speaking is very important, but only after you have all of the information. Listening is the absolute most important aspect of leadership. I think the more I've learned about this, the more I have learned to shut my mouth and listen, which is kind of funny because we're on a podcast talking to each other. But, in my daily life, I've forced myself to become not only a better listener, but a better active listener to make sure I'm getting all the information from them. And look at what we learned in the Zealots podcast as well. Those leaders that didn't listen to other people who led very authoritative, led by just sitting in their office and not stepping out to interact with other people. I'm lucky enough to have a staff at the high school level. And there's times where I'm asked to give direction, but a lot more times I'm apt to ask for direction from the people that are my subordinates, my interns, my assistants. I ask for their input more than when I'm giving input, more than I'm giving directives, because I want them to be more invested and have ownership into our day-to-day operation and activities. Because if we're not all invested in it, if none of us have ownership to it, we're not going to have a productive, successful day. And that's where listening becomes very important.
Back in around episode 86, I think, Mark Knobloch and Josh Yellen came on the podcast. And one of the things that we were talking about was the athletic trainer who loses his cool, that has to prove to the coach that I'm the athletic trainer, I know what I'm talking about. That's the one that doesn't have experience, that isn't comfortable just listening. And like you were talking about, knowing all the details. So just this week, my son was playing in the backyard with the neighbor kid, right? And so they're playing, they're roughhousing because they're 8 to 10-year-old boys, right? They're roughhousing, they're playing, and my son hit this other kid in the head with a bat. So then the little girls go and tell the uncle, and he comes out all hot, yelling, "Well, don't let somebody punk you. Get up and hit him back." That kind of thing. I'm like, hey dude, come here. Do you know what happened here? No, I mean, you hitting him with a bat. Oh, that's not cool, whatever. And so the bat was a pool noodle. So this kid, the neighbor kid, was crying for whatever reason, whatever he had going on. Maybe he didn't like what happened. Maybe he has something at the house, some stress going on at the house that just kind of put him over the edge. But because they didn't come find details, they just came out hot. They came out yelling. The guy was trying to fight and whatever. I'm like, bro, just find out what happened first. And then he goes and gets his brother, which is the guy that lives there. So, whatever. And he comes out, hey man, you can't be having kid. What if my kid came out and hit you with that? Hey dude, do you know what happened? No, It was a pool noodle. They were playing. My son stopped to check to see if he was okay. He apologized. They're playing. Bro, we've been living here. Our kids have been playing together for a year and a half. We've never had an issue like this until that guy came out yelling and all hot, and the girls came in creating drama. Find out the details. Stop and listen. And so the thing I wrote in the notes was Fight Club. All right, so if you haven't seen Fight Club, it's a really interesting movie. But one of the quotes that I've always remembered since I watched that movie in college was, "We don't ever really listen. We just wait for our turn to speak." Right? And so I notice a lot of times on this podcast that I don't always listen because I'm sharing it on Facebook. I'm reading who's checked in. I'm typing in notes. So sometimes I just forget to listen. Luckily, it's a podcast. It's recorded. I have to edit it. I have to go in and type the show notes. So I get to go back and listen. But how much of the conversation do I miss? How much depth do I miss because I'm waiting for my next turn?
Yeah, in those hostile situations that we find ourselves in with parents and coaches, I said this a couple episodes ago, that person reveals more about themselves than about you. Mm-hmm. Right? When they're hot, when they're yelling, when they're in your face, it's they definitely reveal more about themselves, whether it's something that's deep seated, whether it's their own fears, their own displeasures about themselves. They reveal that in those moments, and it has absolutely no reflection on you. When I learned to think that way in those situations, it's made me a calmer individual, and it's allowed me to actually listen to what they are trying to tell me. Even if they are screaming and shouting and spitting and everything, you're able to pull those things out of what they're yelling at you and use it in a very calm manner to ask what they're actually wanting to get across. And when you're able to do that, when you're able to listen and to get that specific information out, it makes you a better leader going forward. No matter how you look at it, there is so much to discover.
So obviously this one is really good because, like reading the Bible, I am 38 years old. I've been reading the Bible, I would say regularly since I was 18. So for 20 years, I've been reading the Bible. I've read it, the whole thing through multiple times. And every time I read it, I would say at least once a week when I'm reading it, that there's something new. I'm like, I've never seen that, or it applies differently. But there's also in athletic training, like just the other day, I was talking to Sophia. I was like, hey, have you ever heard of Pastoral Restoration? I was like, it's something that I think I would like for you to go get trained in because, are you just showing off your Myotech shirt there?
I was looking for a pen.
And so the Pastoral Restoration is something that I think is cool, something I would like to kind of incorporate into our practice. But it's kind of expensive for both of us to go get trained. So I'm like, hey, maybe it's something that you can get trained in, you can bring back in, and you can teach me. Or like the manual therapies, it's something that you can teach me. Or like I said, I mentioned earlier, taking a family trip when we went to Boston. There's there's so much to discover, and like I want to go back to Boston because the first time we went, there's only so much you can see. But I want to go and slow down, spend a little bit more time just looking at the buildings. You know, obviously getting some more cannoli, but there's just so much to discover if you just slow down. And I don't know, it's a tricky battle because we're like, yeah, we you know you want to be involved, but then we talk about, well, set the auto responder on the email, and move around the icons on your phone so you're not just mindlessly clicking on the Twitter app or whatever it is. Like I removed the email because it was on the bottom bar of my phone, so that means it was right there. It was one of the hotkeys. So I removed it from there. So now I have to scroll through 2 pages to get to it. And you know what I noticed Monday is that I had emails on Saturday and on Sunday that were still in my inbox. I was like, huh, I normally would have responded to those right away. But I let it go because I was there. I was more present because of those things, because of the things we've talked about here. There is just so much to discover. And the more we have conversations, I'm going to be talking about women's health coming up in November. And we're talking about incontinence in female athletes, which is something I didn't know until last year. Somebody mentioned to me, I'm like, what? And really? And so it's going to be cool because I'm like, oh, well, now there's something else I need to know, some more I need to learn, some more I need to learn. And it really is just a cool opportunity to get to continue to learn instead of focusing on, well, I don't know the answers. Well, it's just something all right, well, let's learn it together.
Yeah, I've learned that while doing this podcast, there's always so much more to learn. Every time I think I have something figured out, when I think I've gotten right to the precipice of mastering it, I realize that there's way more to learn. It's like you get to the top of that hill, you hit the top of it, and then you realize the next hill is bigger. And that can be daunting for a lot of people. A lot, even for me, there's times where I sit back and I think, why do I keep doing this? And it's that path. It's the pathway. It's not the end goal. That you learn that there's so much more to better yourself from. And it's through learning, it's through activity, it's through listening to others that you realize that there is so much more to learn. Last September, I was at the the roll call um, program with Jocko and the Extreme Ownership Group, and I got up and I was like, I've got the absolute best question to ask Jocko. Like I'm gonna get this awesome response from him. And I wrote it out and I thought, good 6 hours about this question, and I got my moment, and I walked up, and I was the last person to ask questions of the day, and I took a big deep breath and I had this real thought out question. And I said, after your 3 years of doing your podcast and the popularity of the book, what's one thing that you've learned over that time? And I thought it was going to be really thought provoking. And as soon as I ended my sentence, my question, he said, "Oh, I learned that there's more to learn." And I was like, damn it. Like, I wanted something more. But even in that simple response, there was more to it, right? There's so much more to learn. And if you can be okay with that, that's going to help you become a better person, a better professional, a better leader, and understanding that there is more out there for you to learn. And it helps you kind of melt that ego away, because when you melt that ego away, then you become a better leader. If you make a wrong turn, circle back. Mistakes happen. We make mistakes every single day. We make mistakes in our personal life, our professional life. And if we are active in learning from them and we're able to circle back, like the book says, we're able to be better people. And it takes a lot to learn from the mistakes and to be okay with making mistakes. I think that was one of the hard things for me in my young professional life was whenever I made a mistake, it was detrimental. It was life ending. I thought I was losing value as a person and as an athletic trainer, but when I was able to say, no, there's something to learn from this mistake or this moment, or, when we come back together as a team to discuss the things that could go better and went right, and to correct those things, it's just that next step in being a better person and a better leader.
So there's obviously the professional aspect where you have an emergency, you reflect on what do we do, what do we need to improve. So there's that where we have to do that as an athletic trainer. Okay, well, I did this for this ankle sprain and it didn't work. What am I going to do? How am I going to make it better? Or, we did this and Google was talking to me over there. So there's the professional aspect where you look back at those things. But throughout, I think the whole leadership series, or anyone who's really in a leader or we're having a conversation about leadership, they're going to mention reflection. They're going to mention stepping back and taking a look. And Brandy Curry says that it's part of her everyday thing, right? And so she starts the day like reading, and we talked about this in the podcast, and writing out some of the ideas or concepts or whatever, and then she closes out the day the same thing, reading and reflecting on those and seeing kind of what she got done or what she learned, those type of things. And so circling back daily or weekly or monthly is really helped her grow. And she's a leadership coach, and she's doing a lot of really cool things, being involved in speaking and presenting and mentoring and those kind of things where we see leaders, and I think there's a reason. And then something simple, John's laughing already, I can see. We had these like rocks that the kids got from church where they put like painted on them and put smiley faces or something, and they glued these googly eyes. So that's like the little plastic beads, where the eyes kind of the pupil or iris or whatever it is kind of wiggles around the eye. And
like Cookie Monster's eyes.
yeah, like Cookie Monster's eyes. And so these were little, and so my kid was playing with it, and somehow he said he dropped it in his ear, right? And so I'm trying to look in there with a flashlight because I don't have an otoscope at home, and I'm like, well, it looks like it's something on this side versus the other side, so let me see if I can, maybe move it around. Well, that's not a really good idea to stick anything in your ear ever. And so we just happened to call a nurse friend, and she said, yeah, what we normally do with stuff like that is we just spray water up there and flush it out. So we tried that a couple times, and nothing came out. And we're like, well, maybe it fell out. And so he went to bed, I think it was on a Friday. And so he went to bed, and then Monday morning had an appointment, went to the doctor, and it wasn't there. So $75 or whatever it was for the doctor's visit. So now we own a like $30 otoscope that was off of Amazon, so that if we have other things in people's ears or nose, then we can save ourselves some time, some stress, and look and see. And also maybe we can help with ear infections or something, like, oh yeah, his ear is inflamed or whatever it is. And so reflection on just learning from those processes, making a better plan, whether it's personal or professional, is always a good idea.
Speaking of something getting stuck in your ear, next page. If something gets in your way, move around it.
So this goes back to what I was talking about, all the issues I've been having with the podcast and the administration or whatever it is, because I'm not a rule follower. I'm like, all right, I see the rule as a guideline, and I'm gonna observe the wide boundaries that are kind of within that guideline, and so that's typically, sometimes it's created things like the podcast, right? Or sometimes it's created really cool moments and opportunities, but probably an equal amount of time it's created havoc or problem. And so I try to go around rules, but at the same time, I also try to go around obstacles. So I don't typically get stuck. Like Sarah, for a while, at least in the first part of our marriage, she would get stuck at obstacles. And for me, it's like, just find a way around it. Just do something. Just keep going, and it'll work itself out. Just go, And I'm getting so frustrated because I didn't understand we were different, and she'd process things different, and those kind of things. Because that's just how I naturally am. Is I move around things. I just, all right, well, let's keep going. All right, so that's not working. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's keep going. Let's back up and run harder into the wall. Whatever it is, but just find a way around it. But for some people, that finding a way around it looks differently than mine does.
Yeah, I thought about this one as our common gripe, especially at the secondary level, is schedules change, practice, change, games change. There's additions. Um, there is always going to be obstacles in our profession, and they are going to occur. And we need to learn how to relax, detach from situations, and look at different angles and ask questions. And then once you're able to do that, you're able to adapt and overcome things. We know, or if we have a better understanding that things are going to be in our way, you tend to be a little bit more prepared for those things rather than reactive. And that's a hard lesson to learn. That's something that it takes time for people to learn. It's easy to listen to that and to say it's yourself, but the many times that I've had schedules change, it still bothers me. It still bugs me. But if I've learned to, or if I'm better at detaching from the situation, listening, getting all the information, and then adapting and overcoming and creating, um, creating ideas of ways to help other people and to help with the schedule changes. It's allowed me to be a better practitioner because I'm not always reactive. Um, that the page is a little bit about being reactive, but if you're a little bit more proactive and understanding that you're most likely going to have to be reactive, it's a little easier for you to overcome those obstacles and those things.
We've talked about the reflecting. We've talked about a lot of stuff in the leadership series, but like Thomas and Michelle both yesterday were tweeting saying, hey, they've been listening to this and reflecting and kind of making plans, implementing changes, and that's again what we're talking about throughout this whole thing. And one of the things that I mentioned is by sharing your struggles on Twitter, you can use it, or on Facebook or whatever, you can use it as a positive way to reflect and interact, or you can use it as a way to bring down what we're doing as athletic trainers. Because if I say my freaking coaches change the freaking schedule again, they don't ever freaking communicate, and then I leave it at that, we're like, or if I can say coaches change the schedules again, I'm frustrated, guys, I need some help. Or if you can say 1 out of 10 coaches communicated a schedule change, that's progress.
Mm-hmm.
Last year it was 0, right? So it's about perspective and looking back, and those opportunities to make a difference, to see those obstacles like we just talked about. But here you're talking about setting aside some quiet time to reflect. That it's about recharging the batteries. I think everybody you would consider a leader is going to say that sometime, whether that's 4:30 in the morning like John, or whether it's at lunchtime. I've seen people say, okay, well, if I know that 7th period is going to be busy, during 6th period I close that door, turn the lights off 10 minutes, and just sit there quietly, or they play their music loud or whatever it is. Typically I go work out. I enjoy that, whether that's running, lifting, or one of my fellow coaches, he does CrossFit stuff, and so we work out together a lot. And so it challenges me, helps me grow, do more than just lift weights or just run. And so it's doing other lifts, and we're working hard, working together, and encouraging each other. And so that's something that's really been fun. And then at home, there's not a whole lot of quiet time. One of the things that a while back Michael Stevenson had mentioned is that when he gets home, he puts the phone away and doesn't pick it back up until like 9 o'clock or something like that, right? So if I'm home from 5 to 9, I'm there with my family. I put it down and away. Sometimes, I'll say, hey, go grab my phone so we can look this up, or so we can watch this video on how to do this kind of thing. And that's okay. That's different than just saying, yeah, I'm going to keep it in my hand the whole time looking, keep it in my pocket. But I would say caution because I'm 38 years old. I've had a phone since I was probably 20, and I've never once had a phone that was cracked. So last night, my son was bringing my phone out to me when we were outside. He was going to hand it to me. It bumped his leg, fell out of his hand, dropped face down on the rocks, the decorative rocks that we have outside, and I am now a cracked phone screen owner. So, but the cool thing about that is I've learned it wasn't his fault. Like, he was going to do what I asked him to do. He went to hand it to me. He dropped the phone. I didn't blow up. I didn't. It, it wasn't like he threw the phone at me and it cracked. It was he was going to hand it to me. It dropped, and it's, son, you got to be more careful. But I forgive you. And I think that's really important. It changes the perspective. It changes what we do moving forward. It changes his life from that day forward. When I say, son, I forgive you, because it's done. Now it's, you know what, I made a mistake. It's done. We just move forward instead of, you always do this. You're so irresponsible. So even right now, I'm sitting and reflecting. So maybe this is my quiet time therapy as well.
And what Jeremy's talking about is the next page in the book. It's set aside some quiet time to relax and reflect every day. And for everybody, that's going to be a little bit differently, right? So for me, it's prioritizing and executing. So if I know I'm going to have a busy day, like yesterday, I was in meetings in the morning. I had a meeting at night. I had a presentation to do, a community presentation. I knew that I wasn't going to have the ability to set aside time for myself unless I prioritized it. So that meant yesterday waking up really early, going to the gym, because for me, that's my time to reflect and to have quiet time. I have my phone on me, but I don't always respond to emails, or I don't always respond to text messages, because that's my time. I want to allocate that 2 hour block in the morning. That's directly just for myself. And today, the way my kind of workout schedule went, I really enjoy reading. And when I'm able to take a book with me to the gym and ride the bike, because it's a rest day for me at the gym, and I'm able to take that hour and just sit and read a book while I bike, I'm getting two things out of the way. But what I'm doing is setting aside that time for quiet time, to relax, and to allow myself to reflect on days past, and the lessons that we learned, and how am I going to use those things going forward, and to once again prioritize what's important to me. And we covered that with Dr. Games once again in learning to say no. If we're able to reflect on the times that we had to say yes and the times we said no, and find out what's important for our value, we're able to be a better practitioner and a better leader.
So sorry, I jumped ahead there. I didn't mean to get ahead of you. I guess I was not really listening, just waiting for my turn to speak.
Passionate about it. Passion.
All right, so the next page, I'll read that one. It says, appreciate art. It's all around you. And so I feel like we kind of talked about this, where we're talking about the beauty. But for some people, they pay all that money for those like Jackson Pollock paintings where it's just paint splattered on a wall. Yeah. I'm like, I can ask my kids to do that, right? And for some people, it's really cool photography. When we were in Las Vegas, they had this gallery. I can't remember the guy's name, but amazing nature photography, and 30 something $1,000 for this, like 6 foot by 8 foot picture or printing of this picture, and that is beautiful, but I'm not paying $35,000 for a picture, right? And so there's art all around you, whether that's in the music that you listen to, the music you create, the podcast that you listen to or create, the children that you create, right? So there is the beauty or the art all around you if you put your phone down, if you slow down, if you just look at it. I saw somebody today said that they spent an hour looking at TikTok videos and realized how thankful they are that they didn't have that technology in junior high, because of how stupid it is and how much stupid stuff people do. But that's the thing. Put those down and quit worrying about the likes or the followers, and instead enjoy the area around you.
Yeah. It's enjoying the beauty and the little things. It's enjoying the beauty in not just the art that's around you, but your day-to-day life. Because what is the definition of art? It's hard to really define it. I'm sure there is a definition. We can look it up right now, but art is different to other people. And when I look at our profession, the art can be having fun during games, enjoying the small wins, the small little things when your athletes achieve their goals. You work an athlete back from